Ever since Invincible Season 4 wrapped up, this feels like the ideal moment to dive into what Season 5 could actually look like and how the comic material may be spread across the episodes. By the time we're done here, you could have a solid picture of just how insane this season could become. Before jumping episode by episode, we need to talk about how Invincible normally handles its storytelling structure and why the approach may not fully work this time. Season 4 had a much cleaner format because the entire Viltrumite War storyline could fit neatly into one overarching narrative. The series even stretched certain scenes out to flesh out the universe even more. Season 5, though, is a completely different beast. If the show sticks to the same pacing and number of comic issues it actually adapts per season, there really isn't a perfect stopping point that feels satisfying. Because of that, the writers may either have to speed through huge story arcs or cut certain stories off before they truly pay off. So in this breakdown, I'm going over my predictions for Invincible Season 5, covering everything from issue 79 all the way through issue 102. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Starting with episode 1, the story will probably focus on checking back in with Earth while Mark slowly adjusts to normal life again. Remember, he spent months away from the planet during the Viltrumite War, so seeing him trying to settle back into everyday life after all that trauma should be really interesting. This experience would be the perfect opportunity to establish the atmosphere for the entire season while also laying down the groundwork for future storylines. We'd likely reconnect with several Earth-based characters while also getting the return of Dinosaurus, who launches another large-scale catastrophe in his warped attempt to save the world. We'd also probably get the rematch against Powerplex, although this time it's less about physical battle and more about emotional closure, as he's finally forced to acknowledge his mistakes and apologize to Invincible. Later on, Mark talks with Universal and comes to realize she was never truly evil, leading him to finally let her go. Around the same time, we begin seeing subtle changes in Mark's personality, which eventually leads into a conversation with Cecil about handling enemies with less brutality. But the episode will likely end with Cecil unveiling the Invincible variant Reaniman, leaving viewers wondering how Mark will respond. Episode 2 would immediately continue from that reveal, but instead of exploding in anger like the old Mark would have, he surprisingly stays composed and tells Cecil he understands why the Reaniman were created. Cecil himself is caught off guard by how much Mark has matured, and honestly, this feels like the perfect way to open the episode because season 5 is probably going to revolve heavily around Mark evolving as a person. At the same time, the season would start planting seeds for larger threats, especially Robot returning to Earth alongside Monster Girl, while smaller scale villains slowly begin becoming dangerous again. This episode may also start introducing the early stages of the Dinosaurus arc, where Mark actually breaks Dinosaurus out and starts working beside him in hopes of creating world peace. Meanwhile, Cecil and Eve begin trying to figure out what Mark is really planning. From there, the story could transition towards Nolan and Oliver's side of things on Teller's career. That would also line up with the show's usual pattern where episode 1 focuses heavily on Mark while episode 2 shifts attention towards Nolan. It would give the series more time to develop Nolan and Oliver's relationship while also allowing Debbie's emotional struggles to breathe, especially since she's still trying to process Nolan re-entering her life after everything he did. The episode would most likely close with Alan and Nolan beginning their confrontation over the Scourge Virus. Episode 3 would pick up right in the middle of that conflict. While Alan and Nolan throws hands, a huge portion of that fight would actually revolve around philosophical arguments, with Alan challenging Nolan's loyalty to the Viltrumite Empire and questioning everything about the Scourge Virus. Eventually, Oliver joins the battle and sides with Alan, causing things to spiral into a far more savage fight. By the end of it, Nolan is badly wounded and tells Debbie they need to return to Earth before collapsing unconscious. After that, the episode would shift back towards Invincible and Dinosaurus battling Omnipotus. Once Mark returns home, he tries explaining to Cecil why he released Dinosaurus, but the conversation gets interrupted once news breaks regarding Alan, Nolan, and the others. Mark then attempts to stop Alan and Oliver from destroying the Scourge Virus, but Alan is simply too powerful for him to handle. That's when Theodore steps in and says, "I've got him." Now, technically, the episode could stop there, but honestly, this moment feels way too important not to extend further. I think the cliffhanger would instead be Oliver accidentally exposing Mark to the Scourge Virus. Episode 4 would likely open with Bulletproof's origin story, showing how he got his suit after being inspired by Invincible himself. This helps establish him as a temporary stand-in hero while Mark recovers from the Scourge Virus exposure. We then get a scene between Thetis and Cecil. Despite their disagreements with Mark, they'd agree they have to save him no matter what. We'd also see Dinosaurus clashing with Alan before the two realize they're ultimately chasing the same goal, leading them to both go visit Mark. From there, Thetis tries convincing Dinosaurus to help find a cure for the Scourge Virus, but things change immediately once Thetis learns Mark might actually possess a legitimate claim to the Viltrumite throne. Meanwhile, Bulletproof starts making moves towards Eve while she's still grieving Mark, setting up an uncomfortable subplot for the season. Then the story cuts back to Thetis secretly attempted to murder Mark while he's defenseless. Dinosaurus steps in to protect him, allowing them to escape. Later, Eve confronts Thetis, but he lies about what really happened, causing her to return to Earth believing Dinosaurus was responsible. After everyone reunites with Mark, the episode closes with Mark trying to punch Alan, only for his own arm to shatter on impact, revealing the virus has stripped him of his strength. Episode 5 would begin inside a hospital with Eve and Cecil beside Mark. Cecil starts criticizing Mark's recent decisions, but the discussion gets interrupted when the Pentagon suddenly comes under attack. This moment really emphasizes how vulnerable Earth becomes when Invincible isn't around. If the adaptation follows the comics closely, Robot would then explain everything that happened between him and Monster Girl in the Flaxen Dimension. Honestly, this would probably dominate most of the episode since those issues mainly focus on Robot, Monster Girl, her child, and the years they spent trapped there, because time moved much faster in the Flaxen realm. What seemed like months on Earth ended up being years for them. During that period, Robot conquered the entire dimension and ruled over it, making enormous decisions that completely changed him as a person. Monster Girl also entered a relationship with a female Flaxen and eventually had a child. By the time they return to Earth, they are no longer the same people, and the transformation becomes extremely important moving forward. The episode could potentially finish during the London battle, but knowing the pacing of the show, they may speed through the entire conflict with a single episode. If that happens, the ending may instead focus on Bulletproof's parents, questioning why he was injured if his twin brother was supposedly the one fighting aliens, leaving viewers confused about what really happened between the brothers. Episode 6 would open with Mark completely snapping on Alan and Oliver for failing to show up during the London attack that nearly destroyed the city. We'd also get a follow-up conversation where Oliver apologizes for accidentally infecting Mark with the Scourge Virus. Around this point, the series would begin exploring how some Viltrumite on Earth are slowly changing the same way Nolan did. This becomes obvious through General Krieg, who helped defend humanity during the London incident in order to protect one of his wives, despite receiving direct orders from Thragg not to interfere. Then the story transitions deeper into Bulletproof's backstory, as he finally reveals the truth involving his brother and parents. His parents contact the police over his role in his brother's death, only for Bulletproof's girlfriend to murder them. The entire situation eventually gets covered up, ending the storyline on the disturbing note before the focus shifts back towards Alan and Nolan discussing recent events. Alan later sends Nolan on a mission and Debbie ends up accompanying him. Shortly afterward, Mark regains his powers during an extremely bizarre scene involving Eve. From there, we move into the climax of the Dinosaurus storyline where Mark and Dinosaurus enter one final confrontation. Mark finally realizes Dinosaurus' method for saving the planet have become far too extreme, causing the two to battle. Things escalate rapidly, and in one shocking moment, Dinosaurus seemingly kills Mark live on television, ending the episode with a massive cliffhanger. Episode 7 would immediately reveal the twist that Dinosaurus never actually killed the real Mark, only a duplicate. The world reacts to what it believes is Invincible's death, showing the emotional impact his loss would have globally. Meanwhile, Mark wakes up in a strange coma-like state where Dinosaurus finally explains his true intention. Eventually, Dinosaurus realizes he was wrong all along and asks Mark to kill him. Mark ultimately grants that request, bringing the entire Dinosaurus storyline to a close. This leads into Cecil confronting Mark over his recent choices, eventually resulting in Mark agreeing to work alongside Cecil again. Mark reunites with his family after they believed he was dead, and shortly afterward, Eve reveals she's pregnant again. We'd also see Thragg furious with the Viltrumites over their recent failures and their growing lack of control on Earth. Mark and Eve then discuss the pregnancy and decide to face the future with optimism this time around. Later, the two help clean up one of the disasters caused by Mark and Dinosaurus, but the situation spirals when Robot attacks Mark over his actions. Cecil and Bulletproof intervene to defend Mark, arguing he's still done far more good than harm. This would begin setting up Robot as a major future antagonist. Hopefully, we'd also finally get a payoff scene where Mark confronts Cecil about secretly keeping Conquest alive, since Season 4 never really addressed it properly. From there, the storyline shifts towards Cecil meeting with Nolan. While Cecil acknowledges Nolan's recent actions, he explains he still can allow him to remain on Earth, ultimately exiling him to the moon, a punishment Nolan surprisingly accepts. The episode would likely end with Thragg secretly observing Nolan from above after Cecil leaves. Finally, the season finale would revolve around Thragg confronting Nolan in a massive showdown. The episode would also dig deeper into Nolan uncovering the truth about his heritage and his deeper connection to the Viltrumite history, revealing major details about what being a Viltrumite truly means. A huge portion of that finale would probably focus on expanding that lore, which the series has consistently loved doing whenever the Viltrumites are involved. During the chaos, the Viltrumites learned the truth about Nolan's role as their rightful leader, causing their loyalty to slowly shift away from Thragg and towards Nolan instead. That change allows Nolan and the other Viltrumites to finally overpower Thragg and end the conflict. The Viltrumites kneel before Nolan and recognize him as their new ruler. Afterward, we move into a celebration honoring Nolan's leadership, and while the finale leans heavily into Nolan's story, we'd probably also see Mark and E taking another major step forward in their relationship, reinforcing just how much Mark has changed throughout the season. Overall, this honestly feels like the perfect way to wrap up season 5. But let me know what you think down in the comments.
If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 200 subscribers. It'll really go a long way. Thank you.